same story growing up. That one day I'll just find someone, a match made in heaven, it'll be perfect. I put my exes up on pedestals just to have my expectations knock them off. It took me falling for you to finally learn that soulmates aren't found there. Babe, yeah, we choose each other every day. Even when we bend, we know we won't break. We just bounce back better 'cause soulmates aren't there.
Okay, quickly to intro some voices and so people know who you guys are. If they're listening at home, I'm going to go around the table. On my left is Andrew Beason.
Yo, how's it going?
Hey. Ian McConnell, right ahead of me.
Yo, this is me. How's it going?
And Jeff Terry on my right.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Today we're doing a little like roundtable discussion, hang with the songwriters of my latest single, which is available now, Made. Came out like 3 weeks ago. These are the guys that I wrote it with. Thanks for coming in, gents.
Yeah, glad to be here.
3 of my just fave Nashville people. So it was like, let's talk about Made, let's talk about the craft, let's talk about music, let's get into my favorite stuff, the Why We're Here, cards, and all the things. So thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
It's a good time. It was difficult to find this room, but otherse,
Yeah,
it was pretty easy
So
to
it's
get
a little
here.
confusing. We're in a little bit of a maze, but
like
you're here now, baby.
We're here now.
You're here now. Jeff, you are kind of the starter.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the odd man out.
No. You are the Made doesn't exist without you, my friend.
This is true.
And so kind of tell from your point of view, like maybe describe our relationship just in the
Do we have, how much time do we have?
that's another podcast. Like creatively, you really get my sound.
Yeah.
And so you're super musically talented, but not necessarily like a traditional day-to-day songwriter, but you make me like tracks and stuff when something pops into your head. So take it.
Yeah, I would not say I'm musically talented, or
That's a lie. Keep going.
I'm not like, I don't lead with that in Nashville because people are so talented. But I love music, and when I stumble into things, I like know they sound good. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know
None of us do.
keys. I don't like, when I used to play guitar more at church growing up, I just memorized in like where I was at and what strings and frets I could play in certain keys, but I didn't know the names of the notes or anything. So when I make music on my computer, it's just I don't know how to explain it to people, and I don't do it with other people around because it's not fast and it's not whatever. Anyway, yeah, we've been talking for a long time about you wanting to do this. Justin Timberlake, John Bellion, Keith Urban, Sam Hunt, conglomeration, like all these things coming together in country music, storytelling and some of that instrumentation. And we talk about it so much that I get it, but we don't have a great reference to point to.
Right.
So it's just easier for me to go try to find those sounds because they live in my head, but I can't find them anywhere else.
Yep.
And we have been talking about, after the Wilderness Project, that this next layer of music, we wanted to think of it like this like Western sound. So like baritone guitars and single notes and like, the like trotting, stamping of like horses and like some of those sounds that just make you think of the old American West, but done in a cool way that's not, cheesy, like whatever. Yeah, that's stuff. So like, how do you like nod to it but not go right after it?
Yep.
So I just started making tracks on my computer, and I would just call them all number whatever. And so Made was 13. And I thought it was like, oh, I think this sounds cool. I remember I sat on my couch one night and came up with a little guitar thing.
Yeah.
And anytime this happens when you send me songs too. If I run to my computer right when I hear the song or right when I play something, it's like, it always ends up being something. Like other times if I hear a song and I'm not,
Doesn't inspire you to keep creating.
yeah, it's like the second I see almost where it can go immediately. Like I hear it and then I just have to get it out. And anytime that happens, I feel like it turns into something interesting. So that happened with Made, where like I'm sitting on the couch watching probably Frasier or Breaking Bad reruns, and the little guitar thing came together and I was like, that's something. And I just walked right over to my computer and started messing around with it. So that's where that came from. And then I sent it to you. And I think at first you listened to it like just through your phone speakers.
Correct.
Or something. And then a few days later you texted me and you were like, that thing hits super hard.
Because I didn't ever get to the chorus.
Yeah. Well, and then you like think you were listening in your car too.
Yeah.
Where like the bass and subs and stuff were in. And so then you guys took it from there, really.
So my point of view is that I got 13 along with a lot of other tracks, and I am often like, well, I'm just like too busy in life to get to creating, and it's one of my like things that I hate about everything's going so well right now, but it's really tough because then I don't have like my mornings to just like be bored and fuck around on the computer or on the guitar. So it's really helpful when Jeff sends me stuff like that because it just immediately sparks my imagination. I actually wrote or tried to write like 3 other things over 13 and just was like trash. But then I was listening to a podcast, just a shameless plug for our friends over at Armchair Expert.
Oh, I was listening to them on the way over.
So good. So freaking good. We love you guys. And they were talking about, this is so meta. A podcast I listened to was talking about a show that I love called The Good Place, which you're also a fan of. And she mentioned how Chidi's character talks about how one of his lessons in the show is that like maybe soulmates aren't real at all. And then she kind of just said it. She's like, yeah, it's like soulmates aren't like they're, she said it's slightly different. It's like soulmates aren't like assigned to you. It's something that you like find along the way. And it just like hit me. Cause I had also written this. There
I
we
like
go.
it.
I'd also wrote in this this other hook that was like, it's not given, it's earned or something. And it was going to be this like workout, like jam song or something. And I like the phrasing of like, it's not blank, it's blank. But I didn't like love that hook. So I heard this idea.
It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
Okay, so we're going to take down Made. Exactly. So, yeah, I just heard that, and then 13 was kind of like, kind of pinging me daily, like, hey, this is inspiring. So then I had like a rough verse and like maybe a half a chorus, and we had that right that day. So that morning, was highly caffeinated. I was writing 13, and I was like, cool, I'm going to bring this to you guys because you are 2 people who I trust a lot with songs and your opinions and your like creative, just like, you both are very, your taste in music, I really respect and like really always want to know what you think and what you're listening to and what you're making. So when that was on my calendar, I was like, okay, these are guys that I trust with this. Cause I think the more I get into this, the more I'm like, I don't necessarily want to bring in new ideas to new people. So like I definitely guarded that. Cause when I heard it, I was like, okay, I think this is a really good idea. So then it just worked out that was on our calendar. And that's kind of now where you guys come into the picture. What were your thoughts when like I played it for the first time? What were you thinking? Were you like, oh, this is garbage?
No, I remember hearing the track and just being like, yo, this is dope. Who made this? And when he said Jeff, I was like, what?
I know.
Right.
Well, I keep telling people like, oh yeah, Jeff's a writer on. They're like, holy shit. Because it's so like you said, you don't lead with that, but it's just fun. It's a fun part of
Yeah, it's just that like that track was dope and you had that, like you said, you had like a rough verse of like started going like in the whole idea of like, soulmates aren't found. And we talked about your parents and like our families and like people work hard at it and stuff.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say something to Jeff too, just like how you're saying like you're just sitting there and like you'll come up with something, you go right to the computer. That's great discipline. A lot of people don't have that to be like, oh, I'm gonna do that. Me, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I might grab my voice memo and do something. I'm like,
Totally.
back to it. Let's go.
I mean, it's not
for the 90th time.
discipline. It's just like, because I don't do music every day, when I'm doing that, it's usually in my free time. So to me, it's just exciting. And that's something, I mean, this is a whole nother conversation, but
hit it, baby.
I feel like in Nashville, there's so many people do music on their day to day, like I was gonna say 9 to 5, but more like they're 10 to 2 or whatever. Yeah. That they almost lose, I think, what brought them into music, and it becomes such a, like, part of creativity is you need the discipline and the rhythm, but so much of creativity is also the freedom to let inspiration be fresh and hit you when it's real. And I get the benefit of really only, no one's asked, like he asks me for tracks sometimes, but it's not technically my job. So I really only do it when I have something that I'm interested in. So I get the freedom to just be like, I'm super excited because I don't go sit in the writer's room every day and I don't feel like all my ideas are tapped, you know, where I feel like you guys can get there more frequently because you're trying on a daily basis to come up with stuff.
Yeah, I'll say like, especially like when you first start writing, at least for me, like I needed to write. Like I needed to put it out there. I needed to just get it out there. And I haven't needed to write a song in a while. And I kind of miss that. Like for me, like now it's just like, all right, I've got an idea. I want to do it for this person or do this or just like, but it's not like a feeling. I actually like, oh, I need to say this right now, kind of therapy kind of thing. But
Is it as
it used
fulfilling?
to be. Oh yeah, I still love music. It's like even just seeing, if y'all didn't know, we have a song called Made out right now. Spencer Crandall, doing pretty great. But like you just go on like, I know we're way off tangent. This is me anyways.
Keep it going.
You want me? Here it is. But like just I'll go on and I'll see like the comments on TikTok and like, you know, it touches me. Like I get like little tears just going like, man, people are touched by this song. Like they're using it as a wedding song now. I saw one person like, we're going to use this stuff to like our wedding vow renewal thing. I'm like, what? Yeah. That's so cool. Like that's fulfilling to me. Like that's the reason I write songs that, you know, hopefully it'll either make you laugh, cry, dance, something, you know. Yeah. So
well, super. Just let's keep tangenting here. I played a show this weekend. One of the first shows I got to play Made. I'm just passing this along because it just reminded me. Like, in case you're wondering, it's definitely touching people's lives. This lady came to the show and like didn't have VIP or anything, and so just waited till everyone was kind of gone. Comes up to our kind of fill-in TM for the weekend. Was like, hey, can I talk to Spencer? I would really love to tell him a story. He's kind of just like, no, like, you know, that's not how that works. She's like, no, I'm not like a crazy person. She just goes into it. She's like, my husband passed away last year, super unexpectedly. He got really sick out of nowhere. And so I didn't play Kept Every Vow because like there was a miscommunication with the band where they came on too early, which is on them. But we didn't end up playing. I usually do it like an acoustic breakdown. So she's like, that song was our song when he was here, and now Made is our song now that he's gone. Mm-hmm. And because we really worked at it, they were together for like 14 years or something like that. Super. So she's like, it gives me like, it feels like he's still here with me when I listen to that, like in the car and when I'm working out or whatever. And like, so that's just passing that along to you guys, because that's exactly when you're talking about that. You at home or like when you're just listening to TikTok or reading comments, it's like, are we really making a difference? What's the point of this music thing? And it's kind of back to what you're saying of like, why did I get into this? Why do I do it? That is the moment where you go, oh, like this is bigger than just like a TikTok thing or whatever. So yeah, that was the whole story. That's all I got for it. But it's really cool because I think it really connects you with your why. And then I think now I feel more on fire to create than ever because you feel really connected to that.
Yeah.
Ian, what were your thoughts the day you walked in to the right?
I have a very different perspective on this song because when we wrote this song, I was about a month and a half away from a breakup, but I was in the middle of like
on the backside.
I was still in the relationship at the time.
Oh, the breakup
but it was
coming.
the fight. The fight had started.
I remember this.
The long fight had started, and you know, while writing Made and talking about, especially in that second verse, you know, like the fighting and the making up and all that stuff, I was like, yeah, it like takes a lot of hard work. And from where I am now, I'm like, oh man, I was manipulated and I was fighting for something that I should not have needed to fight for, and like these crazy asks. It's I love the song. I love the song, and I think it's very true. But I remember that day. I think about that day a lot since the song has come out, and the way that I was kind of, while writing this, trying to justify my own situation as like, this is totally normal. You know, this is just what happens. When in my case, it's not totally normal, and it's not just what
that's
happens.
a whole nother. That's like the relationship conversation, not the songwriting thing. But it is true. Is like, how do you know what's worth fighting for?
Certainly,
because like some relationships is like, this is a sign to get out. We're not married. We're not committed. So let's call it before we get too far.
And how many times can you go through the second verse of Made until you're like, okay, well, we shouldn't choose each other because this isn't working.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I remember you tell me about that a little bit. And that's
Yeah.
it's always interesting when you're working on something like a big love song like Made, and then in your personal life something almost completely different is happening, or like or when you're writing a breakup song and you're in a loving relationship. It's like this weird thing as a songwriter and as an artist.
Sure.
It's interesting to hear.
To be fair, the relationship was still a loving relationship. Of
course.
It was just the ways of loving each other were not compatible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That makes sense.
I remember in the writing session, like I think we just got done landing the hook. Finally got the chorus. I just remember like you were just on fire though. You're like,
Standing
and
in
he's
the
like-
kitchen.
Yeah, and then we're in the kitchen. And I just remember you just be like, so babe, it's like, yeah, we're not written in the stars. And you started just going. I was like, oh, where you going?
I credit you so much for that second verse of like, it's really your style of writing, which I love, is like the
Stream of consciousness.
stream of consciousness, kind of like, I think it's like ranting, like just letting your heart
I remember
bleed. Just
I was
go,
sitting
go,
in
go.
Frothy Monkey in the Nations when he sent me the work tape from the session, and I always like I just need to see the lyrics, so I like sat there writing them out, and I like remember texting him being like, I think the like second verse, I love it. It just needs like to clean up a little bit because it's like and this and this and this and this.
Oh, it's a huge
But-
run on.
But you start to fall in love with it, of like it almost is this like building of intensity every time you say it, and it keeps, and it's all these things, that just hit you one after the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's, second verse is so great with just like, I mean, like I said, like I just remember seeing you being on fire, like it just hit you, like, all right, just rolling. And then I think some changes were made, like when y'all were doing like the little demo part, but I love like, it's like, we're both right, so we're both wrong. Like, yeah, been there. Like, it's just, I think everybody lines up to those moments. Like, yeah, we've done that. I've been in that situation too. It's just, I don't know. It was a fun moment. I just remember you being on fire. And I was like,
Well, and from my perspective as an artist, I really wanted, I kind of wanted a really different vibe from my person, because I didn't want to go like my person to like my forever to like all of a sudden you're just the lovey-dovey wedding
Sure.
guy. And so I had to be really intentional about like, okay, the next thing we put out, not that it can't be a love song, but it definitely can't be like just a
Super sweet.
super sweet, super earnest, because although that's super fun, it also isn't like necessarily what I believe in, like that it's just all sunshine and rainbows. That's stuff
Right.
we talk about all the time, is like,
Yeah.
is that love is like really hard, and it's
It
this
is.
thing. And I think we talk about the way that we were raised and the way that like we view love now versus how we used to, how our parents are, together and these kinds of things. And so Made was my version of like, I think it's almost like an answer to my person, of like, if you want the my person moment, you actually have to live out Made, which is like kind of cool. And so as we were in the right, I just remember being like, I love that. I remember in the right being like, cool, I'm going to put this out like as soon as possible, which is just not normal. Even before we wrote the second verse, I was like, cool, if we don't finish this today, I'm going to bug the shit out of you guys until you want to finish this song.
Yeah.
Because it just felt like that kind of moment. That's not normal. I think a lot of people listening might be like, oh, artists just feel that all the time. Like, you're an artist. How often do you feel that way about like, this is one of my favorite songs, I need to put it out tomorrow?
Yeah, it's, well, that day I'm usually like, yep, this is the one. I totally got it. And then 2 days later, I'm like,
fade.
darn it. I thought this was so good.
Yeah.
That chorus doesn't really hit right.
How did you guys feel when you heard like the kind of like the first really produced version of like, hey, this is close, or like a pretty good mix? Like, do you remember that feeling or that day?
the first time I heard it, I was just hanging with Lalo, one of the producers of it, and I was talking about the song, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, no, I'm pretty sure Spencer's putting that. I've been working on it. I was like, yeah. He's like, have you heard it? I was like, not really. He's like, well, let me hit you with this, and it was like, I don't think it was fully mixed, and for sure wasn't mastered, but like I remember playing it, I was like, my jaw was just like, like it sounded so good. I was like, yes, like
Thanks, man.
I was already on fire, but it was just like,
That's good.
level.
I get nervous sending songs that you have produced out to the writers, because the biggest fear is that they're like, oh, it got ruined or whatever in the
Right.
production.
I was caught very off guard.
Yeah.
I heard it the first time and I was like, I don't know how I feel about this or what to do with it. And then I listened a couple more times. I was like, okay, all right. And then like took a few days off and then listened again and I was like, I got it. Okay, I got it. Cool.
What
Cool.
about
it? Was
it?
a really well. It was a style that I was just unfamiliar with. I mean, it's pretty much an entirely new thing. I don't really have like you were saying. There's like Jeff. You were saying.
It's hard.
There's
to
not really a
point
reference
to something else
for
yeah.
that. Like, what is that song like? I have no idea. It's like almost like a Tarantino movie.
We have been
like that.
talking about the next iteration of music.
Yeah.
That it would be the soundtrack to Django 2, written by John Bellion and Keith Urban, and like
Yeah.
Sam
Justin
Hunt,
Timberlake,
Justin
Sam Hunt.
Timberlake.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is that. I mean, the other word that we've really used is cinematic, and that's like
Definitely.
we wanted the artwork to feel kind of like a movie poster, and for it just to feel very grand and make a statement, and it really feels like it does that.
And I think wilderness was like some words I would use to describe it were like clean, poppy, like polished. And I think the music that we're leaning into now is almost like the opposite in a cool way. It's like this
Gritty.
evolution. Like gritty's a word we use, cinematic, dramatic. These things that are like, how do we create sounds that almost make you like feel like you're riding a Mustang through the desert? Like it should evoke imagery that is like really big movie style versus some songs it just feels so clean and so good, which is totally fine. But I think there was a couple decisions and a couple roads that we would get to, and I just remember pushing really hard. Like it's not a snap. It's not a snap at all. It's actually like this like clock thing, or it's not just a snare. It's like, how do we make it sound like chains or something like heavy or something like, it's not just a normal electric that's clean. It's like, how is it?
It's textures and layers, and it's like this combination of organic sounds. So like there's some of that, like those tribal drums that have like an animal skin stretched over it, and you get that sound from it. But then how do we bring some sort of modern element to it, or put some EQ or distortion on it that just takes it somewhere else? And so it's exciting because that's what also helps is like it's not just a drum kit, and it's everything is like, let's sit there for 2 hours and just roll through samples until we find that thing that's like, yeah, that's what it's like finding the sound that matches up with what you see in your head, and the second you hear it, you're like, yeah, that's what I was envisioning, and then it just starts to come
And I think
together.
the Made production process actually, I think Made as a song, the process of producing out that song is so much of the project that we're about to make. Like, and I've always heard about this, like, oh, that song changed everything for us, and it like was kind of what we centered everything around. I think we'll look back at Made and be like, oh yeah, that was the sound of the next 2 or 3 years of like what we leaned into, because it was so different. And that you sang like there's not a reference for that, made me so happy.
That's
It makes me
great.
so
Well, and it's like
proud.
I think it was like Wilderness was a thing, but I think that we were trying to get to Made with Wilderness. We just couldn't get there. And like I think Delete All, Say in This are kind of like pointing you in that direction, but we still didn't fully get there. And then Made just finally felt like, oh, and now it's like, this is where we want to hang out for a while, because it really feels like what you've been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's pretty much the full story of Made. I have like other questions for you guys. Like, Beason, you're a songwriter. What is your favorite part of the songwriting process? Is it, it's actually more like, what's your favorite part of like creating songs? Because obviously, like, I think we all love the hangs. We love hang with people we love. Like, my whole life's mantra is like literally like create things I love with people I love. So it's one of my favorite things in the world. But like, what about songwriting was interesting or pulled you into it?
A little bit of kind of what I said earlier, just like the fact that you can create something out of nothing and then it affects somebody. Like it can affect someone's life. And originally you just did so it could affect you. Just like you just had to get that out, I think probably one of my favorites though is like that moment after you finally nail the hook. And like you get the hook and you're like, okay, this is awesome. Let's go. That moment right there, and like everybody's pretty fired up, especially if you get a good one. There's been times where you can, miss the.
It's a lot of times for me.
Oh yeah.
But when you really nail it, there's not a better feeling than that. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Ian, what would you say? Like, you're a songwriter, and then you obviously have your own artist stuff, which is awesome. If you're listening to this, please go check out Ian's artist stuff because it's fucking awesome. What is and you do a lot of solo writing too.
Do a lot of
which is
solo
super interesting. Like, what is maybe the question I'm asking is like, what is the difference between like a song I'm gonna put out, something I'm super proud of, a song that I like think has the potential to say exactly what I want to say, versus a song that sits on your phone, and what are some of those markers?
A lot of it is how much of myself is visible in this song. I even like I talk almost daily with my manager Kayla and talk about like older songs that I like. Oh, I still love this song so much, and older songs where I'm like, yeah, I don't really relate to that so much anymore. And like my favorite ones are the ones where I just like still feel that way.
Yeah.
And like I don't feel like I've moved on from that. And my ones I'm like, oh, I could do without it. I understand that, you know, it had a time and place. I'm just like, I've just moved on from feeling this way. So I mean, even I do my best in songs that I write with others and for others to just like slip a little bit of my my personal angst into everything. And I also find, certainly when I'm writing for my own stuff too, that I will usually journal first, and then come up with whatever the idea is based on like, oh, I was kind of unaware that I was feeling this way. And then when you start writing the song, once there's like, okay, there's a structure, there's some rhymes need to hit here, and then you like search through some rhymes and you find that one rhyme and you're like, oh, wait, somehow this rhyme told me how I feel about the actual situation. Because this rhyme is so clear and that word should definitely be there.
Yeah, it's like this puzzle that like never existed, but yet kind of always existed, where like it just has to be this. This is exactly how I feel.
Love that.
Yeah.
I spent my first probably 2.5 years in Nashville just writing over and over and over and over and writing so many songs, like, 7 or 8 songs in a week, like just trying to get the craft down. And as I have been in Nashville longer, I write fewer songs, and I come out of each write like exhausted. I'm just like, I'm so tired. My brain is like, it's fried, but not in an intellectual sense. It's like I could cry or go to sleep, or I need to eat food, or it's just like it's a very emotional process, and that's what I love, because that's how I've always expressed myself, and it's so wonderful to be able to do that in a way that has turned into a career, and that's pretty rad too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're really good at it. You're actually like, you've really inspired a part of my process, because we've talked about like how you do your like walks with your headphones and journaling and stuff. And I've taken some of that and been like, you know what? I need to like journal a little bit more. And so like, I'll be in my notes and stuff. Cause sometimes I feel like, Jeff and I talk about this too. It's like the Nashville songwriting process feels like this thing. It's like set in stone. Like, okay, well, we're just gonna show up and write for 3 hours, and even
Somebody's got a hook, and you're like, oh, how do we build the story around the hook? And
you're almost writing like a story, not like your story. And that I think is the difference of the music that I'm trying to make now. I think that's you do that really well as a writer and as an artist. Is like, it is your story, it's your details, it's your heart, and the more vulnerable and scary it is in the room, which is that emotional exhaustion, I think that is the more powerful song. And I think it usually is the one that in 2 or 3, 5, 9, 12 years, you're like, yeah, I still like this, because it was this thing that like was real and true and authentic. And that's really cool. And it's hard to do, but it's really cool.
It's very interesting. And I not to bash the Nashville process. It works for a lot of folks.
For sure.
But it is interesting. Sometimes you'll go out to in Nashville, we've got writers rounds where 3 writers are up on stage and they take turns playing the songs. And sometimes you're there and you're like, you can just feel that it's not felt.
Yep.
Not always. I mean, certainly around the great writers, you're like, that is brilliant.
Correct.
You may have started with the good hook or not, I don't know, but like it makes me feel this thing.
Right.
And then you hear the songs where you're just like, cool, you had like a nice little spin. And
that was a note in your phone. You
wrote
guys all knocked it out before lunch. You went over to, Taco Mamacita, and you had a margarita.
I do love me Taco Mamacita. I haven't been there in like years. I haven't been back on Music Row in a
It
minute.
doesn't exist anymore.
Well, that's
Does
a
it
big.
not? It's gone?
It's gone.
Yeah.
Wow, I'll never go back.
But the like, I don't spend as much time on Music Row either, and I think it's because I found a little bit different of a process, and it's kind of how I started Made. And a lot of the songs I send to Jeff now, even if it's just like a little snippet, is like, I almost want a verse chorus that I'm freaking out about, and then I take it into trusted people. So it's like so me already that it can't unbe me.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah, like, okay, no matter what happens to Made now, it's going to be a Spencer Crandall song. But now I want pros to come in and go, which is exactly what we did. And I tell you guys, and I hope that I'm super clear, none of this is in stone, but I feel really strongly about the like concept or the like base that I have.
Sure.
And that I think is the biggest change in my process. I did the same thing for like 4 years, is like writing every day, 2 a day, just writing. I think I look back at those songs, I'm like, oh, it's taught me so much. It's like, oh, don't go left there, go right, which is important.
Totally.
Now it's, instead of volume, it is depth. It is, how does every song feel like Made, because you're only writing once a week and you have the soul points to pour into it. And it's just a very different process.
I don't know if y'all have felt this, but I have found the longer that I've lived here, the longer the talking sessions are at the beginning of the write. And for a while, I was like, oh, we spent 2 hours talking.
Yeah, we gotta
like,
get to the right.
Shoot, we like haven't written anything. Like, oh no, what are we gonna do? But like, I also find that when we just start writing, we write something that nobody cares about.
100%.
Yeah.
And I've also started like with trying to, I'm a very efficient person and efficiency minded and stuff. And I'm like, I'm just like getting coffee with somebody today who's like not in the industry, or it's just like a friend or whatever. And I come out of those 2 hour coffees. Sometimes, you know, in the morning, I'll be like, oh, that's probably not a good use of time. I'm not like actually working. I'm not being productive.
Yeah.
And I'll come out of those coffees and I'll just be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write. And in 45 minutes, I'll like have a song that I love.
Yeah,
I'm like,
because you're emotionally, your antenna
aligned.
is so high and you know exactly how you feel. Exactly. Alignment is like a weird, because it's like aligned with what? Like it's like, I don't know what it is, but it is, maybe it's just yourself. It's like you are so tapped in with self-awareness and emotion. You're like, I know exactly what I need to say. I know the BPM. I know, like, you're almost that locked into how you feel. Pretty special feeling.
When you're with other people too, it's so like, oh, I've got this idea for a song, even if you don't talk about that it is for a song, but you're like, I have this idea that like life is like this way or whatever, and you're just talking about your own life, and someone in the room or someone at coffee or whatever is like, but have you considered that it's also this way? And you're like, that's what it is.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
And you don't have to come in being like, this is the direction and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes that works and that's great. But when somebody is willing to say, but what if it's not like this? Or what if it's like that, but augmented in this way, that's so valuable and just
So valuable.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
I'll say some of my favorites have come from just, like you said, in that first hour, even longer, of just chatting, like people talking about their real life and stuff, and they'll say something. They don't even know they said it, but there's a nice little chunk there. It's like, hey, so I just heard you say this, and this would be sweet. And those songs have turned out to be some of my favorites as well. Just like when you don't even have an idea, and then it just shows up in the room. It's like, hey, look at that.
Yeah,
You are remarkably good at that, Beason.
I would agree with that. I think that's one of your superpowers in the room.
I have trouble finding those because I've heard a few people say that. Lydia Dahl is also great.
Super
at that.
good at that.
Yeah.
I call them like, I call them like, I say this all the time, but in my brain, I call them like mirrors. People who can like almost just stop you in a conversation and be like, did you even notice that you feel this way? And it like, it's for the first time you see yourself clearer because that person is really, and it comes from being a great listener, which I'm not as good at as I'd like to be.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
And I think you're a great listener. I think Lydia's a great listener. These people who are genuinely listening, and as they process, Jeff, you're a great listener. These people who, when I'm done ranting and I've gone on my 9-hour TED Talk, they go, did you even notice that you, or like it's what you didn't say, like you never really gave yourself credit here. And I'll be like, whoa. Or you said this, like, what do you mean by that? I've never heard anybody say that, because I am so like you in efficiency, productivity. What am I getting done today? And you can just skip right over a great idea or an emotion that you're feeling because it's not productive.
Right.
And so I think
Which is
you're really
hilarious because it's so productive.
right, because it's counterintuitive. Because if anything, there's nothing more productive than really sitting with yourself, knowing yourself, and saying, oh, this is how I feel, because that's where you're going to get great art. And that is where you don't have to contrive some random story. Your art will just pour out of you, and then it's money. That's all you need.
Yep.
I feel like one of the most creative times of my life was when my car, like, stereo didn't work. So I was making up songs on the way all the time just because I had nothing to listen to, so I had to make stuff up. And I was like, actually, that's a pretty cool hook. Like, and now I don't do it anymore. It's just always just something going on.
Yeah.
Like, might need to look back into that.
I try to build in like boredom into my schedule. Like right now, I haven't had like some silence in my life for a minute. Like we were on the road this weekend. I was super busy today. So I look forward to tomorrow morning. Like I won't listen to a podcast. I won't listen to music. I will just be kind of bored, just like sitting there.
That's why they say like that idea of great ideas come to you in the shower is because you don't have a phone. You don't have anything to distract you. You're just standing there with your thoughts. And it's the space to feel what's going on in your head and like something just hits you because you have the space to allow it to happen.
As a manager, how do you, like, what is your bar of, like, I send you a song. How do you feel about, like, what needs to go out in the world? What is a Spencer Crandall song versus just, like, a good written song? Like, how does that process look for you? Because I know, let me preface this with, you're really, really good at, like, letting me do my thing, which is awesome. But I also come to you for advice. And I come to you, like, what do you think? I value your opinion. So how do you navigate that?
I mean, that there's like a couple. One is I'm just one other person. So there's one layer that's like I'm just a fan of music like anybody else would be. So some songs are for me and some songs are not. And so there's a part of me that has to say, do I like this song? Why or why not? Is it a good song? Even if it's not for me. Like a song can be a great song, but it doesn't make me feel something because I don't relate to it, but it's still a really good song. So there's that piece, which is just like, what's my gut reaction? Do I want to listen to it again? I'm a very one of my difficulties is I just live in a world of symmetry in my head. So when you break rules that aren't
like verse 2 have made.
Yeah, like they really mess with me. Because like if you've told me that you have a structure or a pattern that is set, my mind it's like laying railroad tracks for that pattern the rest of the song. And then when you go off of it, I'm just like, I just jerk while I'm listening. And I have to listen a couple times to be okay with it. Or if I've listened to a song a bunch and then you change something, it really messes with me.
That's something for me I always notice is even if I think it's a far better version, I have to give you 2 to 4 weeks sometimes before you're like, okay, I see how this, because when you hear something or listen to something, you like attach to it.
It's just
sure.
locked in. Yeah. And then I think the other part is kind of like what you said. For me, it's like the mirror thing. It's like, cool, but I don't understand how this song has any place in what you've told me you want to do right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the other part is like, it can be a really good song, but if you're working on Wilderness and you're working on, and it's like, we need one more heartbreak song, and you write like When It's Summer and You're 17, and I'm like, cool, right? Like, we'll come to this in 6 months. This makes no sense today, you know? Yeah. So there's all those pieces that is tough. And the hardest part it's gotten much easier, but early on, the hardest part was, I know that you guys just sat in a room for 3 to 6 hours and poured your emotion and all of your intellectual abilities into this piece of art. And for me just to be like, nah, like makes me
the word nah
makes me feel like the worst person in the world. So, sure. And I've told you this, like that's where I listen, I let it, do its thing on my first listen and get a gut reaction. And then I really let time do what it is supposed to do. Because if you come back to it over and over and over again, I know that, and I'm going to trust your gut even over my own. And without fail, like you move on from songs that aren't the best and you keep coming back to the ones that are good. And so you sort of do it to yourself if I just give you the time to do it.
Good to know I'm just being swindled into
that Nat though. I mean, yeah, we do spend 3 to 6 hours writing it, but like that means that we're like invested and so biased. We're just like, oh, we put so much work into this.
And that's why I send everyone to this table songs.
Having an uninvested listener.
Yep.
And you are invested in different ways, of course.
Right.
But having someone who is not like invested in the process, I really relate to this one line, but it doesn't really fit the rest of the song.
And I've
being like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yep, I've made the commitment that like, if the song gets to a point where the conversation is let's go cut this, I will be 100% honest before it gets to that point.
Yeah, that's good.
But if there's time, I'm gonna let the natural process maybe work itself out a little bit.
Yeah.
Or just let it kind of develop, which I think is why, and I don't want it to change for us. I love hearing a song the day it was written, but I know a lot of managers that will have like listening meetings.
Yeah, like a weekly, like, all right, what do you got?
Yeah, or like a month even, where it's like you take the best 6 songs that you wrote last month that you're excited about, and that's all that they listen to in that meeting because you've already done that on your own.
Yep.
But I like because, random parts of the first song off of the second installment of like you've kind of had 2 or 3 versions of that are just like a verse and it's not a whole thing.
Yeah.
You're just like, I know what I want the song to say and I know the idea, but I'm working it out. And I like hearing that. I love, because even if that song doesn't make it, I know what you're going after, and it allows me to know if the other songs are like hitting that mark that you're trying to hit.
Yeah. It also creates like a bar. Like, okay, this is where we are. And then if something falls short of that, it's like, well, obviously this is still the best one. And it's super valuable. And I really struggled when I moved to town of like getting real honest feedback. And I would get very defensive because I'm like, you don't understand what we just went through. Like, I just poured my heart into this. I just told my whole story of my breakup. So what are you saying? This isn't a good song. This is me. Versus now I feel the opposite where I'm like, I want the nah as soon as possible. And that's why I send songs. Like I have a little, what I kind of in my brain call like my wise counsel of just like 6 to 12 people, depending on the song, I'm going to send to these people because if 12 out of 12, which high compliment to us, this is what happened with Made, 12 out of 12 are just like, yes, tomorrow, put it out tomorrow. I love this song.
And what makes it hard is, I don't listen to every single song that you guys write, but you guys don't write bad songs anymore. Like, they may not all be like 95%ers, but they're not below 80. Like, they're all good songs. So that also makes it hard because sometimes I hear a song and there's nothing that I can say constructive to like that I would change about it.
It's just not it.
It's just not it. And that's really hard to like
But I want to know that
communicate.
as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Because I also think we've all done this, is like you hold on to a song and you're like, maybe this is it, maybe this is it. And then that's why I try to get it out as soon as possible. Like 12 out of 12 people are like, it's okay. Then I know, not that it can never work or that I shouldn't trust my gut, but 12 out of 12 of the people that I trust about songs say it's I should probably try to beat that song. And I want to get to that as soon as possible. And I had, even tried to write a couple things over 13. I've tried to write this next project. It's so pointed and so many of the songs are like specific. I think I've talked to you guys a little bit about what this next thing is. Like, it isn't just writing any song. It's writing like this kind of song with this kind of meaning. And so I'm writing like the same style of song or like story like 7-8 times to get it right. And that comes with a lot of close, better. Like that's the process. It's super interesting.
I think that the is the worst of the responses. I would rather you hate it.
Yeah.
Vitriol and just like, this is awful. Because it's memorable.
Revelation, baby. Lukewarm.
If it's memorable, that makes it memorable. Being lukewarm, nobody remembers what made them feel nothing.
Yeah.
That's true.
But if you're like, oh, even if that song was like, oh, I cringed so hard, like you remembered it though.
Yeah.
Like how many people hated Call Me Maybe?
True.
Everybody knows it.
Very true. Well, this is great. I would like to move into my favorite part of the conversation, which is just the why are we here questions. I got a big old deck of questions. There are no right or wrong answers. We'll do a couple of these and we'll go around the table and just kind of give everyone's
I'm going
responses.
to really attempt to give a wrong answer.
Good luck.
Okay.
This makes sense as a nice segue. What is the most important piece of advice you'd give to someone starting out in your line of work? Beason, we'll start with you.
Most important advice. I would say show up. Don't be the one to cancel. Like, show up. You never know what's gonna happen the next day, and
Snaps
gonna-
from Jeff.
there we go. Because you never know, that could be the song, you know. And study your craft hard. I mean, yeah, show up and study. Man, I got a lot, but if you just want one, I'm just
No, that's great. I talk about it as like kind of like working out. Like even the days you don't want to, but if it's within you, you should do it. It's gonna make you better. Even a bad workout's better than no workout kind of thing sometimes. And I agree with that. Showing up. I think that's the years that we were talking about at the beginning is like I just had to go write hundreds of songs. I just had to show up at writes because you're getting a lot of them that like out of the way sounds terrible, but you really are. Like I think that's something in my DMs I get a lot. Like I want to be a songwriter. What should I do? Write 100 songs, forget they exist, and then write another 100 songs because you're going to be so much better at it just by doing it.
Yeah, I feel like those first 3 years, I was writing 2 to 3 songs a day. Like my brain, talk about mush, like it would get there. I'd be like, why'd I do that? Because I said yes. Because I didn't know how to say no at the time. I was like, yeah, no, I can make that happen. This should be done by this time. Let me grab a little bite. I'll be right over. And I mean, every once in a while you get one. The other one, your brain is mush. So,
Oh yeah.
I mean, knock that out. Do that. If you're gonna do it, figure out where you're gonna be. I would say move somewhere, LA, New York, or here, Nashville, and then show up. I mean, just do it.
I love that.
Yeah. I'm all in favor of like if you like writing songs or you like being an artist or whatever, go try it. However, if you find after trying or even before trying and you think like, you know what, I could have a really happy, fulfilling life not doing this, do something else. Because it is so hard.
Yeah, I can.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It's so hard. And there's so many. I mean, I've been having some mental health issues this year. And I always know when I'm about to go into like a spiral because I'll be like, I could have been doing something else. And then I kind of talk my way through it. I'm like, no, I couldn't. I could not do anything else. I mean, I could physically do something else, but I would be wishing that I was doing this.
Yeah.
And that, you kind of got to love it. And you can't force yourself to love it. Like, you can tell yourself that you love it and, but, being here for the right reasons, being you just love creating stuff is really, I think, very important.
No, I love that. That's amazing. And I think there's a difference between wanting and like needing.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I can't imagine not having the outlet of writing songs. And I say this all the time, like if the world ended and it's just me on an island, I'm probably still writing songs. Like it's what I would do. It's like written on my bones. I just can't imagine life without it. It's how I process things. It's like who I am at this point. And I think we all know the people who it feels like the reason is like, because I would love some attention.
Oh,
I would
I'd love to be famous.
Yeah, I'd love to be famous. I'd love to have, because I think a lot of people think it will solve some sort of problem or some sort of trauma or whatever from their childhood or from, their life. And it won't. It will exacerbate it. You either need to love it because you love to create. And that's why I was so happy when I kind of figured out my little mantra of like create things I love with people I love. Because it took the stress away from numbers. It took the stress away from, I have a big goal to play stadium, and that's like fun to talk about, but it's also fucking stressful. And especially days where you're like, we are so far from this goal. And that's anybody in this town. You're like, I want number ones. I'm so far from that. I want to play this. I'm so far from that. But if you can get back to that, like, I call it like the slumber party feeling of like, when you're like doing something and you look and it's like just 3 a.m. and you were just with your buddies and you're just like dicking around. That to me is what a great songwriting session is. You blink and you're like, whoa, that was so fun. I loved that. So I'm just retweeting you out loud because that's just the truth, my
It's also
friend.
just, it's entertainment. You provide if you're a songwriter and you love writing songs and it's the way you express yourself, it's just endless entertainment coming from yourself. You're just entertaining yourself for hours and hours and hours and hours over the course of, how long, I've probably spent in my life now an entire years worth of time in the process of writing song.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy to think about. I've never thought about that.
We gotta be close if we're not there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jeffy?
Well, I will answer from the perspective of manager more than
as you should
songwriting. But I think just reverse it and it will hold true, which is only work with people that you personally would be a fan of their music. And so for the songwriter, it is tether yourself to people who are a fan of what you're doing, and not just necessarily people that like have a hookup or have a connection, but really believe in you. And on the management side, like, don't necessarily just chase the money or say what's the fastest way we can like earn money or make money. Like, there's realities and practicalities of life, but it's just not a process necessarily that you can manufacture. It takes time, it takes learning and creation and all that stuff. So you have to be in it to a degree and believe in it and see. And if you can't see it, then you really have to trust where that artist is going and believe that they have a vision for where they want to go, and you're helping carve that path with them. So, you just really make sure that you're in lockstep and really believe in that person that you want to work with.
Love it. Well, thank you for believing in me and stuff. Appreciate you. What is the detail about your story that very few people know, Beason?
This counterclockwise thing.
Man, you really get me.
No.
Like I said, they're big, they're weird, and no wrong answers.
Can I get the origin of the question? No,
Can you use the question in a
Can you
sentence?
use the question in a sentence? No, what was the question one more time?
The full wording of the question to buy you some more time. And again, these are
Appreciate
pretty weird. What is a detail about your story that very few people know? And I asked this question. I'll maybe give you the premise of the question, which is just like, I love to hear, because I think a lot of people, I'll kind of relate it back to me because that's what I do. I don't think a lot of people know certain little things about the beginning part, and all they see is what Made, like, let's take what Made's doing right now. They're like, wow, overnight, just, this guy came out of nowhere, and you're like, are you fucking kidding me? They don't know about the 3 days. They don't know where you're from. They don't know. So, like, I think there's just cool little details that you can pepper in. Like, one of my favorites is that of Jeff's, which maybe I'm stealing yours.
We'll just go. I'll give you the Uno reverse. We'll go back around.
Jeff serving an Uno reverse on the podcast for the first time. Jeff, take it away.
Why not? I mean, I think I started college pre-med. I finished with a degree in finance, and I knew that Nashville was a city, but it was never on my radar or anything working in music, any of that kind of stuff. And I met Spencer at a very random place in my life where I was pretty much like, I got nothing else to do, so why not? Like, it wasn't like I had managed my friend who was doing like public speaking and YouTube and writing some books and that sort of thing, but that was because he was my friend, and it still wasn't any part of me that was trying to say this could become a career. It was just, we literally had bunk beds and he slept beneath me. So I was like, hey, dude, I'll help because I'm more organized than you. But I was just at a place where all the things that I thought my life was going to be all had stopped. So it was like the railroad, I've used railroad tracks twice today. The railroad track that I thought I was on came to an end. Mm-hmm. And it was like, this train goes no further, so it's time to find another one. And that's where a couple of opportunities in a short amount of time came together. That's why I moved to Texas. That's why I started working with Spencer, and, Texas to Oklahoma to here. And I think we can go back to the advice. It's kind of like, I used to always talk about, like, hold the things that come into your life with open hands, because they will leave at certain times. And if you've gripped them too tightly, then you will fight the change. But if you realize that you just have them for a season, then you're more okay with the fact that life's going to change again. So at that point, I was kind of just looking for what might be next. I've told this story, but I literally was laying face down in my couch.
That's what I was going to say. That's great that you picked it up there.
And my phone was laying on the ground, and I remember hearing it just buzz on this floor. And I looked over, and there was this Florida phone number that I had no idea. And it was kind of like, I have no idea what this is, but why not? Like, life is nothing right now, so it couldn't get worse. I'll just answer a random phone number from a stranger. And it was this lady in Florida that was like, hey, you don't know me. My name is Darlene, and you need to write this name down, Spencer Crandall. And if you're interested in working with him, call his mom. I got that phone call from Darlene, kind of sat on it, listened to the EP for a couple of days, and then gave your mom a call. I was again, the random season I was in, I was running social media for our state fair. I would walk around.
right.
I would walk around the state fair. It's like a 3-week fair in Washington, and I would just take pictures of livestock, and they had big concerts every night. And anyway, I was just like considering all that stuff. And so we spoke a few times on the phone and said, let's give this thing a shot.
Yeah, and I love that because it's, again, something that you would never think of or like know about our story. Ian, a detail about your story that very few people know.
From 2013 through the end of 2016, Ian McConnell, the artist, did not exist. Ian McConnell, the artist, was known as Mac Russell. He made like acoustic rock music. Mac Russell put an album out. I believe that it has been scrubbed from the internet, but I'm not sure. Every once in a while, someone will be like, hey, I found Mac Russell. And I'm like, oh, no.
Hey, that first EP Jeff referenced it? It's not alive, baby.
Oh,
it's,
dude,
it's dead.
I recorded it in a studio. I just been writing songs starting in middle school and then through high school and college. And I've been writing a bunch of songs, and I recorded an album at a studio, and I was like, oh, you just have to record at a studio. That's just what you got to do.
Yeah.
But that basically meant that I produced the album knowing no things about how music production worked. And so the only instruments on the album are acoustic guitar, bass, drums, and cello.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It was I'm so glad that I did those things.
Yeah,
and
of
I hope
course.
that they never resurface.
Yeah, it's just that, like, I think a lot of us think the first thing you do is going to pop. And then looking back, you're like, thank God it didn't, because I didn't know anything. Like, how.
man.
Where did the moniker Mac Russell come from?
My middle name is Russell, and Mac is part of McConnell.
Okay.
So.
I see. I get it. Brad Lime.
Jeff, before he used to play guitar for me on stage. Just a nice little, I guess I'll go. Jeff, before he'd go on stage, would you get kind of nervous because he's not a guy who loves to perform necessarily. That's not what you got into this for. But I couldn't even play the guitar early on. I was teaching myself on YouTube still. So Jeff's like, I'll play the guitar for you. Had these like little tracks on a computer. And so before the show, Jeff's always in the corner and he like dry heaves. So he'd have to have like a beer or two to like loosen up. So we made him an alternate ego, like a persona. Instead of Jeff Cherry, he's Brad Lime, and he was confident. He had, the pizzazz, the zhuzh to get on stage and deliver a rock star performance.
Blue moons.
It was always Blue Moons.
Brad Lime shows up and
I'd be like, who
ready to hop on stage.
Who do we got here? He's like, yeah, Brad Lime, baby.
Lead Tasso before Lead Tasso.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Yeah. Beason?
Love that. Yeah, I would say, I guess in 2010, that's when I started thinking, all right, maybe I'm gonna go to Nashville. I know I want to write songs. At this time, I was artist as well. I was like, I loved what I was doing. It's more like acoustic singer-songwriter, but with like a little hip-hop and beatbox stuff, like loop stuff. Well, Ed Sheeran ended up being amazing.
By the way, you're one
beatboxing.
of the best beatboxers I know in my life.
Oh, true.
Thank you.
Same.
And but I was selling cars at the time. I was 20 years old, saving money to do this. And my buddy just out of nowhere was like, hey, you want to go to the school with me out in West Texas, like for music? I'm like, yeah, sure. So just out of nowhere, just went to the school. Glad I did. South Plains College, if anybody's wondering, in Levelland, Texas. Best bang for your buck. And it's, but I met so many people there that influenced just me being a songwriter. Because I made like the audition bands for like, out of all things, singing for me. I was like, really? Okay. And, I auditioned for everything, guitar, drums, bass, whatever. So did all that. And after 2 years of doing those, I was like, you know what? If I can write a song and someone else can sing it better than I can and perform it better than I I would love that. Also, the fact of being behind the scenes was something nice for me. Like everybody's talking about, do this because they want to be famous. Last, I want to be at the McDonald's going, oh yeah, I wrote that. And nobody else here knows that.
That's cool.
That's cool for me. But let's see, where was I going with this whole story? Details. Yeah. So I guess that was like me being an artist, trying to do that, and then realizing I'm glad I went to that college to figure out songwriting is the main thing. That's where I figured out co-writing. and learned how to do that there. And then it's funny, like you have songs. I actually recorded an EP as well.
Oh, sweet.
Never put it out though. I recorded it with a guy named Justin Robinette. You know who that is? Like Michael. So you should check those guys out. They're really good. But yeah, I had it. The songs are on there. I was like, man, these are amazing. I would never play them again ever to this day.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of all of our like takeaway in this is like I think a lot of people don't know how many times or tries or at bats it actually takes to see success. Like what's happening with Made is so fun. It's our almost 50th total song that we've put out.
It's my first baby.
Release. Well, it's your 50th release.
Yeah.
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 But it's got to be like your 500, 600, 700.
Oh, a song that I've written for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not even including the writing. I'm saying things that we thought were cool enough to put out. We made the album art. We shot videos, all that. Like we're almost at like 50. And it's just now like, oh, we're seeing some low to moderate success. Like it takes so many more tries. And if I've learned anything in this last couple of years, it's like just upping your at-bats and giving yourself the grace to be like, this is the best thing I have right now. I'm going to put it out in the world. This is the best song I have. Like, I'm going to show it to somebody. This is the best. I think that's really valuable. I think this conversation is just a good reminder to me, like, oh, yeah, I'm not in some other place. That's still really valuable to me today is just keep grinding. That's awesome.
Yeah, I remember my first round. Like, I just had one song that got me into rooms, and I'm thankful for that song. But again,
What was it called?
What is the name of that song?
We're only plugging Made today.
Yeah, that's right.
Whoa. Edit this out. Edit this all this out.
Made by Spencer Crandall.
It was called Made by Spencer Crandall.
Honestly, it's been so long ago. Right off the top of my head, it's not even showing up in my head. I know how it goes, but Reason to Breathe, that was the name of the song. And you can already tell by the title, I would never play it again.
But it got you in the rooms. And
It did, yeah. It started my Nashville career.
And you take, man, when you come to town and you're like, I'm going to take the town by storm, blah, 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 and you like realize how bad you are real fast. You're just not bad, but just like, wow, I'm way behind everything here. But then when you get that one song that's just better than your baseline, it's just like, oh man, this is a big deal. And then like, you know, you start getting to that level more and more and more, and then that's your baseline. You get one that pops a little higher than that, and it just like keeps.
That is addicting. What you're talking about there, the leveling up.
Yeah.
It's one thing to write a song. It's another thing to write a song that then you can never like go back to the songs that you've written before and feel the same about them.
Right.
That's a crazy feeling.
Yep.
Which I felt that way about Made, which is out now.
Yeah, made by Spencer Crandall.
Made by Spencer C. Randall. I've got one more question for you guys. You've been very generous with your time. I love all the people at this table, just some of my favorite people in town. And I love you guys very much. Thank you for coming on. Why are we here with your host, Spencer Crandall? Here's the last question. Okay. What is one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever been given? Piece of advice that changed your life, changed the course of your career, something like that. We've gone left. We've gone right. Do we go forward?
You can go forward. Oh, man. One of the best pieces of advice.
And also feel free to chime in if somebody has something else.
Honestly, this is life-related in addition to songwriting related. But just that it's like, and I've been given this advice by many people, including you, Spencer Crandall. You can take a break.
Yeah.
You can like, your whole career doesn't go away if you take some time to not think about it. You know, whatever amount of time that is, because you can really get to a point with anything where if you just think about it too much and you stress about it so much, you're just like, cool, well now this fun thing is not fun.
Yeah.
And taking, you know, regular breaks and scheduling in time to not think about music or whatever the work that you do is, even if it's an awesome thing that gives you life, just is great. It's great, and it has saved me.
Yeah, it's something that we talk about often as friends is like what are you doing for you? What are you doing for funsies? What is when's the last time you just like took a day and just did nothing, which, you know, I'm looking at my next 2 weeks. I'm like, I don't have one of those days. So I'm trying to like build in, even if it's an afternoon, even if it's like on the bus. Like there was a couple times there was really good conversations. The bus, we don't have a bus. We're in a shitty church van. In our shitty church van, we were having these great conversations, and I was like, you know what I need to do is just like put my headphones in and just think to myself for a little bit.
Totally.
It's hard though, because I love people and I love what I do. But what you were talking about earlier, which is what I have to, really the way that I get myself to rest is to convince myself it's actually the most productive thing I can do. Because I can then come back to it with like a real energy for it and a like a lust for this thing, like that like primal, I love songwriting, and when it goes away for real, that sucks. Because as addicting as raising the bar is, it is almost doubly defeating when music isn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
That moment sucks because it feels like the reason you're alive. It feels like your purpose. When your purpose isn't fun, like what the fuck are we doing anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah, just more retweets. Love that advice. Jeffrey, Beason?
Me? You got it?
I'll go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, best advice I got was just if we're gonna go songwriting route, I'll go songwriting route of just being like, find your people, network, study who's doing what, go see them play, meet them, but also just don't try to write like having cuts by like a Kenny Chesney or you know any big like guys, like cool and all, but man, creating songs with your friends and then seeing those take off are the ones that mean the most. And just find your camp, find your people, and also dare to be shitty. Like don't be afraid to fail because you're going to, and don't come in here thinking, oh, I'm gonna do it in 2 years. Like you gotta know. I'm glad my college just ingrained is like it's gonna be longer. It could be 5 years, it could be 10. But as long as you love what you're doing, it's not gonna matter. Also, don't come here thinking you're gonna get rich.
True.
You're in songwriting. That was 80s and 90s. You could have been cool.
Your point about not, doing it in 2 years, like I feel like when you come to town, at least when I came to town, and I know some of my friends when they came to town, like there is a concrete it. There's like a concrete like, oh, and then I will make it. Mm-hmm. And you're like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like it becomes increasingly more clear that there is no destination. Mm. The whole thing is just you're doing this thing that you love, and like, you get better at it and you get into cool rooms with cool people and whatever, but there isn't an end game. Well, I guess there is an end game for you. You're going for the stadium.
Yeah, but even that, that is...
It's kind of almost tangential to, like, your growth as an artist.
Yeah, and what I've convinced myself is because, again, that goal can become just a burden if that's all it is. Like,
yeah.
I'm going to play a stadium.
No matter
Good
what.
fucking luck.
Yeah.
1% of people do that. It's actually... Like, I always clarify that goal is my goal is to enjoy the process of trying to play a stadium. It's to every day be like, I got a little bit better and I loved what I did. I created things I love with people I love and I got better. And by that metric, every day could be a good day.
Yeah.
Today I created, even if it's like I created time for myself with my friends or something like a memory I love with my friends or like that's creating something I love with people I love still. I can do that. That check, big old check, my experiential and my narrative self were satisfied in that way. The stadium thing is a really cool goal because it's so big, and so it's almost so big that I can almost not reach it, which I think is nice. It's this like, it kind of keeps me in the game no matter what, which is fun, and it's like challenging. But then the real goal, the like, if you kind of almost flip it over, there's like a little in smaller print with the magnifying glasses. Enjoy the process because it's exactly what you're talking about is it changes. I thought that 1 million followers on TikTok, I would feel different about myself. I'd look in the mirror and think I'm handsome. I would get girls, whatever the thing is, and it just never has happened at any metric I ever set for myself. So I also know that the stadium won't change anything. I'm still going to get done with that and like have an upset stomach or like have a bunch of emails I have to answer or like be tired the next day. Like it's not a solution. It is just a cool thing to chase and hopefully enjoy the process. And yeah, it's great.
I'll say I have Facebook memories come up all the time where I'm like, Dream big, fella. Like it's like
Yeah.
just the timeline I'd throw on stuff. Like I'm gonna have this and this and in 2 years, let's go. And I'm like, I laugh at it every time. I'm like, well, I'm glad you had that spunk, kid.
My
It's
roommate
like,
Scott always talks about like I remember like bragging. I was like, this 10-year town thing, I'm gonna cut that shit in half. I guarantee you, I have a record deal in 5 years. Like, okay, good luck. Like whatever you want to do. And now even the record deal isn't It's like we don't even know what that looks like. And it's exactly the thing that you were talking about, Jeff, which I think is like the root of suffering is clenching to your life. It's clenching to your story. I will do this. By this time, I'll have this amount of money. I'll have this amount of happiness is open arms, letting the water run through your hands and be like, oh, that's interesting, and enjoying what happens as it happens. That's been a huge lesson for me.
yeah. Also, shout out to Scott Porter because I wouldn't know you without him.
That's true. I know Scott is such a big connector for like, I did this like with 5 people yesterday. I was like, oh yeah, I know so-and-so because so-and-so and so-and-so, and because we all know Scott.
Yep.
And Scott will be back tomorrow, and I miss him, and I love him. Shout out Scott Porter. Who hasn't gone? Brad Lime. Best piece of advice you've ever been given.
I would say it probably came to me in different ways. The way I have repackaged it and the way I hold on to it for myself is do what you do. And it is like, for so long, I've been very fortunate. I have a lot of really talented friends, and most of them are like on the stage type of people. And you can start to think that that's what success looks like. So if you're going to be successful, you need to be on stage, or you need to be in the position of whatever that thing is. But that's not me. Like, that's not life-giving to me. That's not where I'm at my best. And the faster that I leaned in and said, what does success look like for me? What are my skills and gifts, and even like my relationships? Like, everyone, I believe this, that every single person is uniquely positioned to be better at something than any other person in the world. Like, it might be your best co-writer, not the best writer in the world, but there's one person who would be your best co-writer because they have a relationship that no one else has with you, and they have the skills. So, like, if you can learn those things about you, and the faster you get there and embrace that that's who you are and that's what you're good at, you can enjoy success. And it's kind of like, chasing something that isn't what you're meant to do. You can get there and think it's going to fulfill something, but it won't, because it's not who you are. It's like you were just fabricating something because you thought it was a thing that was going to bring you something. So for me, it's like, I'm actually really good at these behind the scenes, organizational, being a mirror to someone else, asking them questions, helping draw out and then repackage it for them. And now I get so much satisfaction out of doing that, and then standing in the back of the room watching you get up and do your thing, because I knew that I had a hand in that. And so, like, be okay with your thing in life not being like what we sort of idolize as like the successful roles in life, that you have to be the artist, or you have to be the athlete, or you have to be like, you can get just as much fulfillment by being a groundskeeper that the football team plays on, if that's what you love and that's what you're good at, and do that to the best of your ability. And you will find joy and contentment in life so much faster that way than just doing what you think is like the definition of success in life.
Well, and you are one of the most self-aware people I know, and I think that is always part of the recipe to happiness, is like, I know what I like. Like, I always joke, if you were to write a book, it would be called Particular by Jeff Cherry. And it's because you know what you like and you know what you don't like. And that's because you're doing you. And you're like, I'm totally cool if in this conversation I feel isolated. I'm totally cool if in this conversation I fit in. But that stuff isn't why I am doing what I'm doing. It's because I'm doing me.
I don't know, like, this is very true. And I don't know where it comes from. I assume it's my parents, and so, like, I was like not the weird kid, but I was different. And I've just always, like, I remember this girl in like 8th grade asking me out. And I looked at her and said, do you think that we're going to get married? And she said no. And I said, then what's the point? And that stuff has just never made sense to me. Like, if I don't see where it's going, or like, I don't, for the most part, feel peer pressure. It's like, cool,
Oh, I know.
do your
It's
thing.
crazy.
I don't like, and so, but I would just encourage people to, like, again, it's just do what you do. It's like, own that, and the faster that you own that and you're comfortable in your own skin. I think that you said this, or it was somewhere else where, that was a podcast I was listening to, and the guy just said, like, I only have one body. And he's like, the sooner I become more comfortable with my body, like, the faster I'm going to enjoy the rest of my life, because I can't change it. It is mine.
Yep.
And that holds true with everything else about yourself. It's not to say you shouldn't strive to learn and improve yourself and do all those sorts of things, but there are abilities that you're just better at. And there's things about each person that they're just like, lean into that thing.
I love that. That's a perfect way to wrap it up. I think, again, I love all three of you guys, and it's fun to have a little round table of, like, we're all kind of doing the same thing, and we all, our little Venn diagrams meet at Made, which is available now. But yet we're all really different. We're all in the same industry, but we all kind of touch it in different ways and in different facets. So I love this conversation. Thank you for being on. Guys, if you're listening at home, make sure to like and subscribe. Why are we here? We love you. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Thanks.
Made, yeah, we choose each other every day. Even when we bend, we know we won't break. We just bounce back better, 'cause so